Look, I will be straight with you. When High Commander Vex 9 told us this would be a routine resource extraction from some backwater planet called Earth, I should have known we were walking into a nightmare. But did I listen to my gut? Of course not. I was too busy dreaming about the promotion that would come with successfully strip mining an entire world. My name is Core 7, and before you ask, no, the number doesn't make us sound cooler. It just means I'm the 7th clone in my batch, which apparently makes me expendable enough to lead scouting missions to planets that quote-unquote probably won't fight back. The briefing was laughably simple. Earth, a small blue-green world, third rock from an unremarkable yellow star. Inhabitants called humans. Primitive technology. No unified government. Perfect target for a quick grab-and-go operation. We'd swoop in, harvest their water, metals, and any useful organic matter, maybe keep a few specimens for study, then move on to the next world. Standard Tuesday, really. What could possibly go wrong? The first sign something was off came when we entered their solar system. My sensor operator, a nervous little clax named Pip-3, started twitching his antennae in that way that meant bad news was coming. "Commander," he chittered, voice crackling through the comic, "I'm picking up some unusual readings from the third planet." "Define unusual," I said, not looking up from my tactical display where I was planning our approach vectors. Efficiency was key to a good extraction. "Well, sir, there are electromagnetic signatures suggesting they have some kind of global communication network. And, he paused, antennae twitching faster. "There appear to be artificial objects in orbit." That made me look up. "How many objects?" "Approximately 12,000, sir. Maybe more." I blinked. Twice. 12,000? For a primitive species? "Yes, sir. And some of them appear to be moving. On purpose." Now, I have been in the conquest business for 30 rotations. And let me tell you, primitive species don't launch 12,000 objects into orbit for fun. They barely managed to launch 12. But our intelligence said these humans were barely out of their Stone Age. So I figured maybe they were just really enthusiastic about throwing rocks really, really high. "Maintain course," I ordered. "Probably just space debris. Natural accumulation." Pip-3's antennae drooped. "Sir, some of the debris appears to have weapon systems." "Weapon systems? On debris?" I laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge. "Pip-3, I think you need to recalibrate your sensors. What kind of primitive species weaponizes their trash? As it turns out, the kind that would make us regret every life choice that led us to their little blue marble. Our fleet of 37 vessels dropped out of hyperspace just beyond their moon, a textbook approach that should have given us complete tactical superiority. The plan was simple. Broadcast our standard surrender demand, wait for them to wet themselves in terror, then begin extraction operations. What happened instead still gives me nightmares. The moment our ships materialized, every single one of those pieces of debris turned toward us. Not slowly, like natural objects affected by gravity. Fast, purposefully, like a pack of predators that had just spotted dinner.
"Commander, Pip-3's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. I'm reading massive energy buildups from multiple orbital platforms. Energy buildups? I was still trying to process what I was seeing on the tactical display. What kind of energy buildups? The kind that usually precede things exploding, sir. Before I could respond, our communications array lit up with an incoming transmission. Finally, I thought, their surrender. The face that appeared on our main screen was not what I expected. Instead of a cowering primitive begging for mercy, I saw a human female with short cropped hair, steel grey eyes, and an expression that suggested she was about as impressed with our arrival as she would be with a particularly uninteresting insect. "Unknown vessels," she said, her voice carrying the kind of calm authority that made my scales itch. "This is Admiral Marcus Kane of Earth Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. State your intentions immediately." "Admiral, Defense Command. These were supposed to be primitives who hadn't figured out faster than light travel yet." I activated our translator and put on my most intimidating voice. "Primitive life forms of Earth. I am High Commander Core 7 of the Vex Hegemony. You will surrender your world's resources immediately or face the consequences." The human admiral blinked once. Then, and I swear this is true, she smiled. Not a friendly smile, the kind of smile a predator makes right before it pounces. "High Commander Core 7, she said, and somehow made my name sound like an insult. "Let me make our position clear. You have approximately 30 seconds to turn around and leave, or we will demonstrate why that's not a suggestion." The audacity, a primitive threatening us. I was about to launch into our standard intimidation speech when Pip-3 made a sound that was somewhere between a squeak and a death rattle. "Commander, they are locking onto us, all of them." Every orbital platform, plus I'm reading launch signatures from the surface. Launch signatures? This was getting ridiculous. What could they possibly launch that would threaten a hegemony battle fleet? The answer came in the form of 12,000 simultaneous energy discharges. Now I want you to understand something about space combat. It's usually a fairly civilized affair. You fire at each other from respectable distances, maybe exchange some threats, dance around a bit. Proper protocol. What the humans did was the equivalent of walking up to someone at a diplomatic reception and punching them in the face with a powered exoskeleton. Every single orbital platform fired at once, not randomly, mind you. Each shot was precisely targeted at a specific vessel in our fleet. The coordination was terrifying. It was like watching a single massive organism, with 12,000 eyes and 12,000 fists, all focused on turning us into expensive scrap metal. The first volley took out 8 of our ships instantly, just gone, reduced to glowing particles in the space of a heartbeat. The second volley, which came approximately 2.7 seconds later, got 6 more. Evasive maneuvers, I screamed, but you can't really evade when you are surrounded by angry hornets that shoot death rays. Sir, Pip 3 was practically vibrating with panic. I'm reading thousands more launches from the planet's surface, and something big is coming up from behind their moon. Something big turned out to be an understatement. What emerged from behind Earth's natural satellite was a ship that made our largest dreadnought look like a shuttlecraft. It was angular, brutal looking, and covered in what appeared to be enough weapons to glass a small continent. Where did they hide that thing? I demanded. It appears to have been constructed in lunar orbit, sir. Recent construction based on the hull signatures. Recent construction. These primitives had built a super dreadnought in the time it took us to travel from our nearest base, while maintaining 12,000 orbital weapons platforms, and launching what appeared to be several million missiles from their planet's surface. The communications array crackled to life again. Admiral Kane's face reappeared, and she looked even less amused than before. "High Commander," she said, and there was something in her voice that made my blood run cold. "You were warned. Now you get to learn why humans don't make good victims." That's when the really terrifying part started. The missiles that had launched from Earth's surface weren't just missiles, they were smart missiles, self-guiding, adaptive, and apparently capable of learning from our defensive measures in real time. Every countermeasure we deployed, they adapted to. Every evasive pattern we used, they anticipated. But worse than that was what happened when they reached us. The first missile that hit the cruiser Dominant Glory didn't explode. Instead, it attached itself to the hull and began doing something. Within seconds, we could see the ship's armor plating starting to dissolve. Not melt, dissolve, like it was being eaten by invisible acid. "What are those things?" I shouted at Pip 3. "Scanning now, sir. They appear to be some kind of nanotechnological weapon. They are breaking down the molecular bonds in our hull materials and converting the matter into, oh no, what? Into more of themselves, sir. They are self-replicating." I watched in horror as the Dominant Glory was consumed from the outside in, its hull peeling away in layers, while the crew's emergency beacons screamed for help that would never come. The missiles that had hit it were already reproducing, creating new copies of themselves that detached and flew toward other targets. "Sir," Pip 3's voice had gone very quiet. "The humans are hailing us again." Admiral Kane's face filled the screen once more, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood several other humans in military uniforms, all wearing the same coldly professional expressions. "High Commander Corps 7, she said. "You have now had a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Your fleet has been reduced from 37 vessels to 18 in approximately 4 minutes. Would you like to continue this educational experience, or would you prefer to discuss withdrawal terms?" Withdrawal terms, from primitives. But as I watched another of our ships vanish in a cloud of self-replicating nanobots, I had to admit that maybe, just maybe, our intelligence had been slightly inaccurate about Earth's technological capabilities. What are your terms?" I found myself asking. The Admiral's smile returned, and it was even more terrifying than before. "Simple, you leave. Now, you never come back, and you spread the word to whatever passes for your government that Earth is off limits, permanently, and if we refuse," she gestured toward the tactical display behind her, which showed what remained of our fleet, surrounded by thousands of still active weapons platforms and an ever-growing swarm of those nightmare missiles. "High Commander," she said pleasantly, "we have been preparing for this conversation for quite some time. Every orbital platform you see has enough firepower to level a city. Every missile has enough nanobots to consume a battleship. And this is just what we keep in the neighborhood for unwanted visitors." She leaned forward slightly, and her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "The question you need to ask yourself is this: do you really want to find out what we keep in storage for special occasions?" I looked at what remained of my fleet. I looked at the swarm of death machines that surrounded us. I looked at the massive human warship that had appeared from nowhere and was now powering up weapons systems that made our main guns look like children's toys. "We accept your terms," I said. "Excellent," Admiral Kane replied. "You have 10 minutes to collect your survivors and leave our system. Any vessel still here after that deadline will be considered a continued threat and dealt with accordingly." The connection terminated, leaving me staring at a blank screen while the sounds of my dying fleet filled the bridge. "Pip 3, I said quietly. "Signal the retreat."
All ships, maximum velocity. We are leaving. Yes, sir. Sir, should I prepare our standard post-engagement report? I thought about that for a moment. How exactly do you explain to High Command that a supposedly primitive species had just handed the hegemony its worst military defeat in recorded history? How do you tell them that the humans hadn't just defended their world? They'd done it with such casual efficiency that it looked almost bored. Pip 3, I said finally, prepare a very, very long report, and make sure you emphasize that Earth is to be classified as a no-contact zone, maximum threat level. What threat classification should I use, sir? I watched through the view screen as we limped away from the blue world that had just redefined my understanding of the universe. Behind us, those 12,000 orbital platforms tracked our movement with mechanical precision, ready to resume their deadly dance at a moment's notice. Use classification Omega-7, Pip 3. Species too dangerous to engage. Sir, that classification is reserved for civilizations with galaxy-ending capabilities. I thought about those self-replicating nanobots, about the casual way Admiral Kane had mentioned special occasions, about the fact that they'd built a super dreadnought just because they'd detected our approach. Exactly, I said. As we fled toward the edge of their solar system, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just encountered something far more dangerous than a primitive species defending their homeworld. We'd met something that had been waiting for us, planning for us, preparing for the day when someone would be stupid enough to threaten their little blue marble. And the worst part, I had the distinct impression that they'd been holding back. The real question was, what would happen when they decided to stop being defensive and start being proactive? But that, as they say, is another story entirely. 3 standard cycles later, I was sitting in a detention cell on Hegemony Prime, waiting to be court-martialed for the greatest military disaster in our species' history. 18 ships lost, thousands of warriors dead, and all because High Command had decided that a species that couldn't even reach their nearest star was somehow a threat worth 47 battle fleets. Yes, you heard that right. 47 fleets. See, when I filed my report recommending Earth be classified as Omega-7, I thought maybe they'd send a reconnaissance probe or two to verify my claims. What I didn't expect was for Grand Admiral Thex Prime to read my description of self-replicating nanobots and decide that the appropriate response was to mobilize half the Hegemony Navy. Corte 7, he'd said during my debriefing, his 4 eyes gleaming with the kind of predatory interest that made smart people run for cover. You are telling me that these humans have technology we have never encountered before? Yes, sir. But sir, with respect, I really think we should consider diplomatic contact instead of—
Nonsense! Thex Prime had slammed his massive fist on the table, making my teacup jump. If they have advanced nanotechnology, we need it. And if they are too dangerous to negotiate with, we eliminate them before they become a real threat. Sir, they already are a real threat. That's why I recommended the no-contact classification. But Thex Prime had that look in his eyes, the one that said he was already imagining the commendations and promotions that would come from conquering a species with superior technology. The same look, I realized with growing horror, that I'd had 3 cycles ago when I thought Earth would be an easy score. Prepare the Grand Fleet, he'd ordered. We are going to show these humans what happens when they embarrass the hegemony. And that's how I ended up in a cell, watching through the detention center's view screen as the largest military force in hegemony history prepared to make the same mistake I had, except on a scale that would make my failure look like a minor navigation error. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, being punished for losing 18 ships to the humans, while Thex Prime was about to lose 47 entire fleets to them. But try explaining irony to a species that considers overkill a tactical doctrine. I was contemplating the futility of military intelligence when my cell door chimed. A guard appeared, along with someone I definitely hadn't expected to see. Core 7, said Director Yax, 2 of Hegemony Intelligence, her scaled features arranged in what might have been amusement on someone else's face. Congratulations, you are being temporarily released. Released? Why? Because, she said, settling her considerable bulk onto the cell's single chair, you are the only being in the hegemony who's actually fought the humans and lived to tell about it. And right about now, that makes you extremely valuable. I didn't like the sound of that. Valuable how? Yax 2 activated a portable hologram projector, and suddenly my cell was filled with tactical displays, fleet positions, and what looked like real-time intelligence feeds from the Sol system. The Grand Fleet reached Earth orbit approximately 6 hours ago, she said. Would you like to see how it's going? The first thing I noticed was that there were a lot more human orbital platforms than there had been 3 cycles ago. A lot more. What had been 12,000 weapons platforms was now closer to 50,000, arranged in concentric shells around the planet, like the universe's most deadly onion. The second thing I noticed was that the Grand Fleet was already down to 39 fleets. What happened to the other 8? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know the answer. They encountered something the humans call a welcome mat, Yax 2 said dryly. Apparently, they have been busy since your visit. The hologram zoomed in on what remained of fleet designation Hammer 7. I say remained, because what I was looking at bore only a passing resemblance to the 1,000-ship armada that had left hegemony space just days ago. The surviving vessels were clustered together in a defensive formation, surrounded by what appeared to be a cloud of metallic particles that sparkled ominously in the light of Earth's sun. Are those the same self-replicating nanobots you encountered? Yes, but improved. These ones appear to be capable of selective targeting. They are only consuming the weapon systems and engines, leaving life support intact. I stared at the tactical display. They are taking them alive. Indeed, very considerate of them, don't you think? Before I could respond, the communications array in my cell crackled to life. A familiar face appeared on the screen. Admiral Kane, looking exactly as composed and terrifyingly competent as she had 3 cycles ago. Director Yax. 2 of Hegemony Intelligence, she said, and somehow she made it sound like she was greeting an old friend rather than addressing the head of an enemy intelligence service. How nice to finally meet you. I'm Admiral Kane. I believe you know my work. Yax 2's eyes narrowed. How did you know you were watching? Please, we have been monitoring your intelligence network since Cora 7's little visit. Did you really think we hadn't noticed all those reconnaissance probes? The director's scales flushed purple, which in our species indicates either rage or extreme embarrassment, possibly both. What do you want, human? Admiral Kane's smile was as pleasant and terrifying as I remembered. I want to have a conversation with someone who has the authority to make decisions. Unfortunately, your Grand Admiral seems to be under the impression that 47 fleets is somehow different from 1 fleet when it comes to threatening Earth. You cannot possibly hope to defeat the combined might of the hegemony. Director, Kane said patiently, we have already reduced your Grand Fleet to 39 fleets, and we haven't even started trying yet. Would you like me to demonstrate what trying looks like? I found myself leaning forward despite myself. 3 cycles ago, I'd thought the humans had shown me their full capabilities. Apparently, I'd been wrong. You are bluffing, Yax 2 said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Kane touched something off-screen, and the tactical display changed. What appeared next made my blood freeze in my veins. Rising from Earth's surface were things. I don't have a better word for them. They were ships, technically, but they looked like nothing in any naval database I'd ever seen. They were organic-looking, fluid, and they moved through space like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. Meet the Terran Defense Fleet, Kane said conversationally. We finished construction about 2 cycles ago. Took us a while to figure out how to make our ships think for themselves, but we got there eventually. Think for themselves. Yax 2's voice had gone very quiet. Oh yes, each ship has its own artificial intelligence, capable of independent tactical decision-making. They learn from every engagement, adapt to new threats in real time, and they are very, very creative about solving problems. As if to demonstrate, one of the organic-looking ships approached a hegemony dreadnought that was trying to maintain a safe distance from the swarm of nanobots. The human vessel changed. Its hull flowed like liquid, extruding tendrils that wrapped around the larger ship like a predator embracing its prey. What is it doing? I whispered. Learning, Kane replied. Every ship it encounters teaches our vessels something new about hegemony technology, tactics and weaknesses. By the time this engagement is over, we will know everything there is to know about your military capabilities. The dreadnought wasn't being destroyed, I realized. It was being studied. The human ship was taking it apart piece by piece, presumably downloading every bit of data it could find before carefully reassembling it and moving on to the next target. This is impossible, Yax 2 said. Your species was barely space-capable 3 cycles ago. Kane's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Director, can I let you in on a little secret? We have been space-capable for a lot longer than 3 cycles. We just hadn't had any reason to advertise the fact. What are you talking about? The Admiral leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely amused rather than professionally pleasant. Did you really think a species develops 12,000 orbital weapons platforms overnight? Or builds super dreadnoughts in lunar orbit because they are bored? We have been watching you, Director. All of you. Every species in this part of the galaxy that thinks conquest is a reasonable foreign policy. The implications hit me like a meteor to the face. You knew we were coming. Cora 7, good to see you again. Kane's smile widened. Yes, we knew you were coming. We have known about the hegemony for over 50 of your cycles. We have been preparing for this conversation for quite some time. Yax 2's scales had gone completely white, which in our species indicates either total shock or impending system failure. 50 cycles. But our intelligence networks are adorable, Kane finished. We have been feeding you exactly the information we wanted you to have. Primitive humans, barely out of their Stone Age, no unified government, perfect target for resource extraction. Did you never wonder why the intelligence was so convenient? I thought back to my original briefing, to how perfectly Earth had seemed to fit our target parameters. A species just advanced enough to be worth conquering, but not advanced enough to fight back effectively. It had seemed too good to be true, because it was. You set us up, I said. We set up everyone, Kane corrected. The hegemony, the Krix Empire, the Void Hunters, all of you. We needed to know exactly what we were dealing with before we made our next move. Next move? Yax too found her voice again. Kane stood up, and something in her posture made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. This was the moment I realized. This was where the humans stopped being defensive and started being something else entirely. Director, the age of conquest is over. As of today, Earth is assuming responsibility for maintaining peace in this sector of the galaxy. Any species that wishes to continue their aggressive expansion policies will find themselves having a conversation with us. You cannot be serious. One species cannot police an entire galactic sector, can't we? Kane gestured toward the tactical display, where the Grand Fleet was now down to 31 fleets and falling. We seem to be doing fairly well so far. This is madness. You are talking about war with dozens of spacefaring civilizations. Kane's expression grew serious. No, Director, we are talking about the end of war. At least, the kind of war where strong species prey on weak ones. From now on, if you want someone's resources, you negotiate for them. If you want territory, you ask nicely. And if you want to conquer someone, she paused, and her smile returned. Well, you will have to go through us first. The communications array went silent for a long moment. Then Yax 2 activated her own transmitter. Grand Admiral Thex Prime, she said, this is intelligence control. I'm authorizing immediate withdrawal of all forces from the Sol system. What? Thex Prime's voice crackled through the comm. Absolutely not. We still have 31 fleets operational. Sir, Yax 2's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. The humans have just declared themselves the Galactic Police Force. And based on what I have seen in the last 10 minutes, I believe they have the capability to enforce that declaration. Ridiculous. No single species could. His transmission cut off abruptly. On the tactical display, I watched as Thex Prime's flagship was gently but firmly wrapped in the tendrils of one of those organic human vessels. Kane's voice came through the comm again. Grand Admiral, this is Admiral Kane. You have two choices. You can order the immediate withdrawal of your forces, and we will let you leave with your ships and crews intact. Or you can continue this engagement and find out what happens when we stop being polite. There was a long pause. Then Thex Prime's voice came back, smaller and considerably less confident than before. All fleets, general withdrawal, maximum velocity. We are leaving this system immediate. I watched through the view screen as the largest military force in hegemony history turned tail and ran from a single blue world and its terrifyingly competent defenders. But as our ships fled toward the edge of the system, I noticed something that made my scales crawl. The human vessels weren't pursuing, they were following, escorting us out, yes, but also mapping our exit vectors, recording our jump signatures, learning our hyperspace routes. They weren't just letting us go, they were tracking us home. Director, I said quietly, I think we need to consider the possibility that this isn't over. I think this is just the beginning. Yax 2 nodded grimly. The humans have our fleet compositions, our tactical doctrines, our technology specifications, and now our hyperspace routes. They know everything about us, and we know almost nothing about them. She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen in a hegemony intelligence director's face before. Fear. Cora 7, I'm reinstating you to active duty. I want you to establish a diplomatic mission to Earth immediately. A diplomatic mission. But Director, they just humiliated our entire military. Exactly, which means they are either going to be our allies or our executioners, and right now, I'd very much prefer the former. As I left the detention center and made my way to the diplomatic corps, I couldn't shake the image of those organic human ships, learning and adapting with every encounter. The humans hadn't just defeated us, they'd studied us, catalogued us, and filed us away for future reference, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a terrible thought was growing. If they could do this to the hegemony, what were they planning to do to the rest of the galaxy? But as Admiral Kane had said, that was a conversation for another day. Right now I had a job to do, convince the most terrifyingly competent species I'd ever encountered that the hegemony could be trusted to behave itself in their new galactic order. Somehow, I didn't think it was going to be easy. After all, we just learned that when humans say we have been preparing for this conversation, they mean it in ways that redefine the very concept of preparation. And that, I realized with a mixture of terror and grudging admiration, was probably the most human thing of all.